It's June 2nd, and the strange side of history awaits. Today, we have an empire plundered, a famous author forced to deny his own death, and a presidential wedding held inside America's most famous home. Let's begin. On June 2nd, in the year 455 AD, the gates of Rome stood almost helpless. The emperor was dead. Patronus Maximus, the man who had seized the throne after the murder of Valentinian III, had been killed by his own people as panic spread through the city. Now the internal city, once the heart of the most powerful empire on earth, had no ruler, no defense, and no one left to save it. Across the sea, the Vandals were an East Germanic tribe. Vandal king Gaiseric had been waiting. He landed in Italy and marched towards Rome with an army. The city braced for fire, bloodshed, and ruin. But before the Vandals entered, Pope Leo I stepped forward and pleaded for mercy. The king agreed to spare Rome from burning and slaughter, but there was a price. For the next 14 days, the Vandals stripped the city piece by piece. Imperial palaces were emptied, private villas were raided, and sacred treasures were carried away. Even the gilded bronze tiles from the Temple of Jupiter were torn off the roof, leaving one of Rome's greatest monuments scarred and exposed. It was not random chaos, it was organized, patient, and terrifying. By the time Gaiseric's ships sailed away, Rome still stood, but something inside it had been broken. And from that haunting occupation came a word still used centuries later: vandalism. Imagine your entire people being remembered for one word: vandalism. On June 2nd, 1897, Mark Twain opened the newspaper and found himself standing at the edge of his own grave. Rumors had begun to spread that the famous writer was gravely ill. Some reports went as far to say he was already dead. Across the Atlantic, newspapers chased stories, and the readers waited for confirmation that one of America's sharpest voices had finally gone silent. But there was one problem. Mark Twain was very much alive. At the time, Twain was in London, and the confusion may have begun because of a relative of his was seriously ill. But once the rumor reached the press, it quickly grew, twisting into something far more dramatic. Reporters wanted a statement, and the public wanted a truth. And Twain, with his dark sense of humor, gave them one. He cabled them back. Reports of my death was an exaggeration. Not quite the famous version people like to repeat today, but even sharper in its simplicity. Imagine reading your own death notice while still breathing. Twain turned an eerie mistake into one of the most famous comebacks in literary history. Over time, the line changed, becoming, "The reports of my death had been greatly exaggerated." And with that, Twain turned it into one of the sharpest one-liners in history. On June 2nd, 1886, became the setting for a wedding unlike any other in American history. Inside the Blue Room, President Grover Cleveland waited for his bride. He was 49 years old and the sitting president of the United States. And the woman who walked towards him was only 21. Her name was Frances Folsom. She was the daughter of Cleveland's late friend and former law partner, and Cleveland had once helped oversee her family's estate. Now, behind the guarded walls of the White House, she was becoming the youngest First Lady in American history. Outside, the public was desperate for every detail. The newspapers wanted romance, scandal, and spectacle, but the ceremony was strangely small. Fewer than 40 guests gathered in one of the most famous rooms in America. John Philip Sousa conducted the United States Marine Band as the wedding unfolded inside the president's own residence. Other presidents had married while in office, but none had ever had the ceremony in the White House itself, and none have done it since. The details still feel unusual today. A 49-year-old president, a 21-year-old bride, a secretive guest list, and a wedding inside the most powerful house in America. Another day, another strange bite from history. Like, comment, and subscribe. Your next eerie dose is just a day away.